Everyone.
It is now 5:59. I ask everyone to put their phones on silent or vibrate. It is now 6 p.m. Welcome everyone to our Eastpointe City Council. This is our special meeting. It starts at 6 p.m. and we will be going over our audit today. Can we start with a roll call? I believe Mr. Gatson will be doing it for us today. Good evening.
Good evening. Councilmember Baker.
Here, Eastpointe.
Councilmember Curley. You're muted.
Here in Eastpointe.
Councilmember DeMonico.
Here in Eastpointe.
Councilmember Lucido.
Here, Eastpointe.
And Mayor Owens.
Here in Eastpointe. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the hearing of the public. The first hearing of the public is now open. We don't have a second hearing of the public during a special meeting. So you are welcome to, if you want to say something in our next meeting at 7 p.m., you're free to do so. The hearing of the public is now open. You get 3 minutes for your ideas, opinions, and also your issues, if there may be some. Mr. Gatson, do we have anyone that would like to speak at this time?
I see no hands and nothing in the chat at the moment.
Okay. Give it a second. Seeing no one is at the hearing of the public at this time, the hearing of the public is now closed. We're going to go right into our presentation of the annual financial report and report of the independent auditors. Good evening.
Good evening.
Good to see you again. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's good to see you too. I guess we'll just jump right in.
Yes, please.
Okay.
I think you're going to share, you need a screen share, Mr. Gasson, to do that for you.
Yeah, I have, we'll be sharing the screen here in a minute.
Okay.
So I'll kick us off. First off, thanks for having us here tonight. While we were certainly hoping to be on site to see everybody and present the audit, it is still nice to see all of you, even though it is through a computer. For those that haven't met, my name is Tim St. Andrew, and with me is Stephanie Atkinson. And before we jump into the deliverables, I did want to first thank Randy and his team. As you're aware, completing an audit is not an easy task, and it's typically a 2 to 3 month process. So we certainly appreciate all of their assistance throughout the audit. We do have a few deliverables for you tonight, and one deliverable that would be completed in the coming months. So the main deliverable would be the annual comprehensive financial report for the year ended June 30, 2021. And you should have received a draft copy of these financial statements last week. We also have in these 2 letters, I don't think you received a copy of, we were just finalizing yesterday, but I will cover with you and we should have those ready. We're hoping tomorrow. They're being finalized and processed today. But the end of audit letter, which would include the required communications that we have to have with you all as the governing body. Essentially what that is, it's the results of the audit. We also have our report on internal control over financial reporting, and that covers any findings that were identified during the audit. Lastly, we have the audit of federal awards, otherwise known as the single audit. This is what will be completed over the next month or two. And it's looking like, based on the schedule of federal expenditures that we have, that the program that we'll be testing will be the coronavirus relief funds that were received by the city in 2021. So jumping into the deliverables, just one thing to point out on the financial statements, pages 1, 2, and 3, this would be our auditor's report. There's a lot of information covered on these 3 pages, but really what's important to you is that it is an unmodified opinion. And so this means that it's a clean opinion. It's the highest level of assurance that we can provide. And really it means that the numbers and disclosures within these financial statements are materially accurate and in accordance with the applicable accounting standards. The end of audit letter, again, you're going to receive 2 letters, but the first one would cover any significant items, any significant transactions throughout the year, throughout the audit. But as you'll see when you get the letter, we didn't have any disagreements with management. We didn't have any difficulties in applying the planned audit procedures. City didn't enter into any significant transactions that lacked authoritative guidance. We do point out, similar to last year, that the financial statements do include estimates And so there are things that, there are numbers that are based on certain factors and certain assumptions. And those key estimates would be the city's pension liability, the city's retiree healthcare liability, the liability for claims incurred but not reported. So general liabilities that are out there that exist but haven't been reported yet. And then the estimate for unbilled water and sewer charges for the water and sewer fund. For all of these estimates, especially the pension and retire healthcare ones, given those are the largest estimates, we look at all of the key factors, the key assumptions. We work with the actuary, review the actuary's reports, look at historical data, look at actual year-to-date data, review information from third-party administrator, just to get comfortable with the estimates. And this year we were able to get comfortable with those to determine that they are fairly stated. There's also within the letter, you'll see one, what we call past adjusting journal entry. So it's a journal entry identified that's deemed to be immaterial, but and so it's not recorded within the financial statements, but we still have to share it with you as those charged with governance. And really it relates to the court activity. And under GASB 84, which is a new accounting standard that the city implemented this year in 2021, all court activity, including the bond account, should be reported by the city in a custodial fund, meaning that you have a separate fund that would show the assets, show the liabilities. So it's really a net nothing when it comes to the bottom line, but the accounting standards would say that that should be reported here, those assets and liabilities. The city did determine that the amounts were immaterial, and we agreed with it. But again, we do have to share that with you. The second letter that you'll receive, which is the report on internal control over financial reporting. There were some findings that were identified this year during the audit that I'll cover with you right now.
I'm sorry, excuse me, Mr. Andrew, as you go
Yes.
through, I don't know if we're still on one, what page are you on so we can follow through?
We are, I don't think you have copies of this. These are letters. Those are the letters that we're finalizing right
okay.
now. Once
I
we
don't know
get
if I'm
to-
the only one looking through and I'm like, what's really going on? So,
Yep, if
yeah,
you're-
just let us
if-
know what we're not gonna see. And when you
Yes.
get to the pages that we have, inform us if that's okay.
Once we get to the pages that you have, Stephanie is going to share those on her screen so then we can all follow along together.
Okay, sounds good. Thank
Okay,
you.
great. Yeah. So as I mentioned, we did have a few findings this year that I'll cover now. The first one related to bank reconciliations not being performed in a timely manner throughout the entire year. So when it comes to bank reconciliations, what we have to do is not just look at the end of the year to see if they were performed timely and accurately, but because cash controls are so important, we look at it throughout the entire year. And during the first few months of the year, the bank reconciliation process was behind a few months, largely due to turnover in the finance department. I believe it was in July when the assistant finance director departed, and it took a little while to fill that spot. So it did cause a delay in preparing and reviewing the bank reconciliations. But going forward, we would recommend that the city continue to look at that process to make sure that those are being done timely and accurately. The second finding, it's a segregation of duties issue, but what we found was that one individual has the ability to add employees to payroll and the ability to change employee banking information. So because that one person can do both things that really should be segregated, we would recommend that the city look at those processes and controls and split those duties up between two different individuals. The third finding relates to journal entries that were identified during the audit. We did have a couple of entries that were identified and recorded, and they are reflected within these financial statements. And the reason really that this is a finding is that the auditing standards, they set the bar really low. So the expectation is that we come in and really find nothing. And whenever we do have a journal entry or an adjustment, it does elevate to a reportable finding. And so we did identify really two main ones. One in the garbage fund, which was impacted the expense in a prepaid expense. So it took it off of the income statement, put it onto the balance sheet because it was for a payment made in June, but related to 2022 services. And then in the Indigent Defense Fund, there was an entry to reduce revenue and increase unearned revenue based on how the agreements with the state are worded. So we would recommend that at year end, the city identify these journal entries going forward, record them before the audit starts. And then the last finding relates to Public Act 213 of 2007. And that requires that quarterly investment reports be provided to City Council. This year, those quarterly investment reports were not provided to City Council. So it is a non-compliance with that particular law. So going forward, we would recommend that the city implement a process for identifying and monitoring these requirements, especially as it relates to this Public Act 213. So I know that was a lot. I'd be happy, before we get into the actual financial statements, I'd happy to discuss any questions that you might have on anything that I covered.
Council, any questions for right now? Councilwoman Lucido?
Yes, I have a question. It's not on anything that you covered, but it was something that you highlighted in your report, and it's on page 38 of our packet. I noticed that, like, for our banking, that a lot of our money isn't insured, and I was just wondering what other municipalities do. Like, is that kind of the typical way, like, a municipality of our size does things?
Yeah, that's pretty standard, because the FDIC insurance is capped at $250,000.
Right.
So unless you are City of Detroit or Oakland County or Wayne County, they have a much more robust Treasury Department where they can invest smaller chunks of money in 20, 30, 40, 50 banks. Most cities, though, would be similar to this, where the vast majority would be uninsured.
Okay.
Yeah, this isn't uncommon.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, touching on what the councilwoman just said, even though it's uncommon, is there any way that we can still, cover that though?
Yeah, they do have, certain banks have investment options, like the Cedars, which you may give money to the bank and then they go out and invest it in $250,000 increments or less. And so you can pick up some of that. I don't know the fees on those or the cost structure on those particular investments, but there are some options out there if you wanted to bring that insured value up a little bit.
Okay.
One thing I would like to point out, I mean, you see it every 2 weeks with council meetings, is our payroll and bills runs in the millions of dollars. So we have to have that cash on hand to cover that. So there'd be no way to ever have it fully insured, just because the amount of cash that we need to pay the bills has to be available. It can't be tied up in a Cedars or something like that. So that's why we generally have a lot of uninsured cash. We need it for the next round of payroll and bills. So we do our best to keep it insured, but we'll never be 100%.
Understood. Anyone else have any questions right now before we go into the presentation on the screen? I think we have more questions once she dig into a little bit more. Thank you.
So yeah, no, you're welcome. And I'll turn it over to Stephanie now. And what we have here is she'll pull up the financial statements on the screen, and it'll be a little bit easier in person doing this, but she's going to toggle between the financial statements. And then we do have a PowerPoint presentation just to show, as we cover certain data points, just to show the trend over the past 3 years. So you may see that she goes from one to the other, but hopefully it'll be seamless here.
All right. So let me know if this is okay, or if you want me to make this bigger. Can everyone see the financial statements that I'm presenting?
Yes, we do. Thank you. Just what page is that on?
This is on, I'm not sure what page of if you have a PDF, but it's page 11 of the financial statements.
Okay. Yep, it's page 11. You have it right. Thank you.
So this first statement is a statement of net position in the government-wide statements. So this is on a little bit different basis of accounting. It's full accrual accounting, which is really going to show you more of a long-term view. I'm just going to touch on this quickly before we get into the fund-based statements. Going to take you actually down to the bottom of net position. And you can see in the governmental activities column, there's about a $26 million deficit. That's $4 million lower than last year. And then after the investment in capital assets and restrictions, there's about $61 million the deficit in unrestricted. But I'm going to take you up to these two lines up here for net pension liability and net OPEB liability. And those two combined are about 65 million and really make up the entirety of that deficit. So just keep that in mind when we're looking at this long-term view here. I'm going to go a couple pages forward to the governmental funds balance sheet. And once again here, I'm going to take you down to the bottom before I get into the graphs, down to the fund balances. And you can see that your fund balance is 11.9 million. And then most of this is committed based on your fiscal management plan. I'm going to flip to this slides here. We're going to start on the slide here for general fund revenue. So your biggest revenue source is property taxes. You had about 9.7 million in property tax revenue this year. That is, steadily increasing here, really mostly just related to an increase in taxable values that continues. You will also notice that there is a bump in state and federal revenue. And really this is related to, the CRF CARES Act funding. There was about $1.2 million received this year related to that. And that is also what triggered the single audit that's going to be performed this year. Fines and forfeitures were down slightly as that continued from last year, really mostly related to COVID. I'll flip to the next slide. And so this is going to cover general fund expenditures. Really, the only thing to note here is that public safety, which is your biggest expense, that was up slightly, and that was related to, there was a $1.3 million purchase of a fire truck during the year, but really pretty consistent year over year. And going to flip to the next slide. So like I said, you had about $11.9 million in fund balance at year end. And compared to expenditures, that's about 46% of annual expenditures. Going to flip back to the statements really quick. And we're going to fast forward to the proprietary fund statements. And this is page 18. So once again, I'm going to take you down to the bottom and cover net position here. So at the end of the year, you had about $60 million in net position. About 74% of that is your net investment in capital assets. So that makes up the large majority. And then I'm actually going to flip back to the slides really quick to cover a couple of things on the water and sewer fund. So your operating revenue and your operating expenses both increased slightly during the year. Your working capital was pretty strong at 12.3%, and your cash investments continued to increase slightly at $9.2 million. So something significant to point out here, which I'll flip back to the statements really quick, is that you have that significant investment in capital assets. And this is reported net. If you go to the notes of the financial statements, you'll see that there's actually $85 million of cost of capital assets, which is, fairly significant. And capital is really so costly. So, it's okay to build up a little bit of a reserve, for emergencies and capital improvements, since the utility system is so important. All right. I'm going to fast forward a couple more slides to the fiduciary funds, and this is page 23 or 22. So this, what I want to point out here is this column for pension and other employee benefit trust fund. This is required wording under GASB 84, but this really is only reporting the retiree health care and does not include MERS. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this once we get to the footnotes. All right, going to skip forward a little bit and go into the footnotes. I'm going to go to page 37. So note 2 here, I just wanted to point out a couple things. So this is the stewardship, compliance, and accountability footnote. So you'll notice that there were several fund deficits that we are reporting here. The district court building fund, the capital improvement fund, the street lighting SAD fund, and the garbage rubbish collection fund all had some fund deficits during the year. There were also a couple non-compliance items. So the city did budget a deficit for the street lighting SAD fund and the district court building fund, which would be a violation of Michigan Public Act 2 of 1968. And then as Tim talked about in the letter, the city also did not provide investment reports on a quarterly basis, which is in accordance with PA 196 of 1997.
Excuse me, Ms. Atkins.
Yep.
We on page 37, you said?
This should be, yes, page.
Yeah, on my page, it says the garbage and rubbish collection fund is in an amount of 133,166. So this one says 5,000. That's a big difference.
Mayor, we can look into that. My copy has the 5,002.
Okay, yeah. Do you, all the council, do y'all see 5,000 too?
No.
No, mine says what yours says, Madam Mayor.
Okay,
So
Yeah,
So
we
that would-
received a couple different drafts. This was from last Friday because we had to get it on the agenda, and there's been updates ongoing since then. So
the right answer is the right answer is the 5,970.
okay. That was a big difference. Okay, where did that 133 come from?
That was the one of the entries that I had talked about that we identified. It moved about $100,000 out of expense into a prepaid expense, so it actually reduced the deficit by that $100,000. So that would be what your difference is.
Oh, you said that in the letter, right? That we have to
Right.
get?
Yes.
Okay,
correct.
so, okay.
And I guess it looks like we lost Stephanie. Her laptop probably died. Like,
Yeah,
Looks like looks like her computer died, so I'll keep this moving here.
well, I guess one quick question, I guess, right before you get started. Do we not need, and I guess this would be a question for Randy, do we not need a deficit resolution for garbage and rubbish collection fund?
because it's a enterprise fund, it has a different standard. So we do not require one for that particular fund.
Okay. Thank you.
I was wondering, I know in our water and sewage fund, we had almost $60 million. How can we invest some of that money? Is that something we can do? Invest some of that money in stocks or anything like that to gain more revenue? Mr. Blum, I guess I'll ask you that.
All right, I was actually waiting for Tim to answer that one. We're sitting on only about 10 million in cash. Some of that's already invested. It has to be invested based on the restrictions of the state. We can't go out and buy stocks and bonds, things like that. So any investment is going to be very limited. This year, the interest rates were down less than 0.5% for most of the year. So we do have as much invested as we can. What we do have in straight up cash is what we need to continue with operations. So yeah, I mean, we like I said, we do what we can, but we do have restrictions by the state of Michigan.
Okay, thank you. You back with us, Ms. Atkins?
Yes, I apologize. My computer got disconnected.
That's okay.
Plenty of questions while you're gone.
So I think the last question was there was a change to the financial statements that I'm presenting and the ones that are in your packet.
Yep, we're all set there, Stephanie. So
Okay, we are all set. On that. Okay. So then I'll continue moving forward. So next I'm going to take you into the pension and OPEB footnotes. So I'm going to fast forward to page 51. And there is going to be the table that shows the changes of the net pension liability during the year. This first column here is going to show the changes of the total pension liability, which is based on the actuarial valuation. And then the second column here is the plan net position, which is really just your assets in the plan and the changes that occurred during the year. The last column is just going to take the net of those, and that's going to be the net pension liability that's reported in the front of the financial statements. So really your changes in the total pension liability during the year were mostly related to changes in assumptions. And your total pension liability increased about $3 million during the year. And then your net pension liability did decrease just slightly because there was about a $4 million increase in plan net position. Down
Yeah,
here,
because we were, excuse me, because we were, it says we're 53.5% funded. We were lower than that last year, right? I don't think we were that high since I've been on council. Mr. Blum, is that the highest? I mean,
Yeah, last year we were right around 51%.
we
So it climbed up a little bit.
Okay, that's pretty good. Okay. Thought we were lower than that. Okay, I'm sorry, Ms. Atkins. I just got excited.
fine. So I'm going to flip to the next page, 50. Actually, I'm going to go ahead to page 53. And there's another table that I want to point out to you, though. So those changes in assumptions that had an impact on your total pension liability. This is going to just show you the sensitivity related to some of your assumptions. So related to your discount rate, you're currently using 7.6, but if you were to increase or decrease that by 1 percentage point, it was between an $8 and $10 million fluctuation. So that is pretty significant. So there is a lot of weight to put onto those assumptions that are being used.
And if MERS, we're not aware of any plans, at least in the near term, for them to lower that discount rate. But I know plans throughout the country are constantly evaluating that, looking at the landscape. And I'll say if it moves at all, it'll be going down, it won't be going up. So unfortunately, any discount rate movement now or in the future will really add to that liability that's allocated to the city.
There's some way we gotta try to get this discount rate. How does that work?
It's something that MERS calculates, and it's really dependent on the investment portfolio. So they would have their team of experts, internal and external, look at their portfolio, because what they have to do is they have to project out based on the investments that they have in the portfolios, what will the investment rate of return be? And that is really what supports the discount rate. So at this point, they use the 7.6% based on their portfolio. That is supportable, but really it all depends on that future outlook, how the bond market looks, how the equity market looks, the risk sensitivity of it all. But most plans are seeing that it's getting harder and harder to make that 7.6. So we are seeing some slowly creep down, similar to what MERS has done in the past 5 years. They've had 2 reductions. I think they were at 8.25 for a long time, and then it was down to 8, and now we see here 7.6. So they've even recognized that and brought it down over the years.
Okay.
I'm going to flip forward a couple more pages to page 55. And really, we're just going to go through the same items for the OPEB plan for retiree healthcare. So this first column, your total OPEB liability actually did decrease about $3 million during the year, which was mostly related to differences in experience and assumptions. Plan net position increased slightly, mostly related to investment income. Overall, your net OPEB liability did decrease about $5 million. And your ending net position, plan fiduciary net position represented about 27.4 of the total OPEB liability. So you're about 27% funded. I'm going to flip we're going to go fast forward 1 page, 3 pages to 58 first. And we're going to go through those sensitivity tables again. So this first one is also discount rates. So you were at a 6.5% discount rate. Going up or down about 1 percentage point was about between a 3.5 and $5 million increase or decrease. So that is, still pretty significant. And then if you flip forward 1 more page, page 59, this one is just going to be your healthcare cost trend rate, which was currently using 7.5%. So going up or down, that 1 percentage point was also about a 3.5 to $4.5 million fluctuation. So still pretty significant. And so I'm going to actually take us to the graphs again. And so we have this graph that shows the history and projected pension and OPEB contributions over the years. And I mainly want to point out this pension one, as this is steadily increasing, and projecting it out to 2025, you can see it's nearing $6 million based on our assumptions. And, we're really just expecting that to continue to increase as the years continue. So that's all I have for the graphs and the financial statements. But we're happy to open it up for any questions that you have at this time.
Council, you have any questions at this time? I think I had a question. I think I asked Mr. Blum this a while. I can't remember the question, but once I ask it, you guys might remember. What's a healthy percentage where our city should be percentage-wise? Like I'm looking at the 53% as far as the pension and things like that. What's healthy? Is that too low? Should we be at another percentage? Also with our fund balance, I know it's a certain percentage that every city should have in their fund balance closer to the end of the fiscal year. Are we too low? Are we too high? Well, you never can be too high. That'd be a good thing. But what's the percentage rate, and do we meet that qualification?
Right. Randy, do you want me to get my thoughts?
I'll take it. As far as the pension goes, anything that is 80% or higher funded would be considered healthy.
Okay.
The state views anything below 60% as being in a deficit. So we definitely have been in a deficit the last few years, and we have deficit elimination plans with state treasury and how we're going to get out of the mess. But we really should be closer to 80% and not 53. So that is not in good shape. As far as the general fund balance, the target is to have a 15% fund balance. We are slightly higher than that, but a lot of it you saw was assigned with our fiscal policy ties up a lot of that fund balance. But it is geared towards a 15% fund balance with the June 30th fiscal year end.
So what percentage are we at now? I know you said we're higher.
Actually, off the top of my head, I don't know. I don't have a calculator in front of me. So,
Okay.
but I believe we're over 20% fund balance, but I can get you an exact number tomorrow.
Okay, yeah, whenever you get some time, because I know every city is supposed to be a percentage of fund balance assigned every year. So I had forgot what that number was. I think somebody told me 12%, but you said 15, so, and we're higher than that either way, so that's
Yep.
good. So I guess the next question that all the council probably been asking since the beginning of time, how do we get at least to that 60%? I know we want to get to 80, but how do we get to that 60%? At least at the somewhat the borderline of our pension. How do we get there?
Well, if you recall, council authorized me to move forward with doing a pension bond.
Mhm.
We're still in the works of getting, we need a municipal financial advisor and we'll call it a pension attorney. I'm drawing a blank on the actual term for it. Hopefully that'll get going this spring and we can get a pension bond floated by the end of the year. That'll get the pension in shape. Then we'll still have a bond issue to pay off, but at least the pension will be in better shape and the state will get off our back. So
Okay.
that's
Well,
really
that
about
puts-
the only way to go because there's no way we're going to come up with $43 million out of our back pocket. So.
Okay. How long would it take us to pay that bond off?
That's what the bond advisor will recommend. It'll be somewhere between 20 and 25 years.
Okay. Thank you. I think those are my two major things. And council, any questions? As council, we get so used to this every year, we kind of getting to understand it a little bit more and more. So I guess we don't have any more questions. City manager or staff have any questions or administration at this time?
No, Mayor.
I would like to run through just a couple of other items that haven't been discussed with the audit.
Oh,
Wanted to
yes, sir.
highlight a few things.
Yes, sir, please.
You saw the general fund had a deficit, but it also included 1.2 million of federal funds. If we did not receive those, we would have had a deficit somewhere about 1.5 million and our fund balance would have dropped significantly. So the federal money did bail us out. We do have some additional money coming in, some CARES money coming in from the county that we will probably receive by year end, which will help the current fiscal year. We'll talk more when we have our capital meeting, but the major streets ended with a $2.4 million fund balance, which is where we need it to be for all the upcoming projects along 9 Mile and the money we're going to have to dole out there. The local streets ended up with a $819,000 fund balance, which is about half of that's already in committed contracts. And that's always been our issue. We just never have enough money for local streets. Major, we do okay, but local, it's like scraping the barrel trying to come up with money for that. So nothing's changed on that one. And then the water sewer fund, for when it comes to rate setting, we break it down between water and sewer operations and then capital. This year, the water and sewer operations was a positive $156,000, but that included a refund from the sanitary district. If that hadn't been there, we would have been in a deficit of $418,000. And our current fiscal year has a $218,000 deficit on the operation side. So our rates are not actually where they should be. They need to be a little bit higher. We did end up though, mainly because the MTU replacement project got delayed. We ended up with 9.3 million in capital funds. But about half of that will get chewed up with all the capital projects during fiscal year 22. So capital, we're in good shape. Operations, we still need to tweak the rates a little bit. And we'll discuss that obviously during capital meetings and budget time. but just wanted to highlight those. And they already talked about the changes in the pension and the OPEB. With the retiree healthcare, I did want to point out, we did the retiree healthcare buyout, if you recall. And last year we spent about 1.6 million on buyouts, and we reduced the liability due to that by 2.3 million. So it was a positive impact on the OPEB funding. And we still have an offer out there for the fire departments. They've got till May of 2023 to decide if they would like to do a buyout. But we're doing everything we can. And if you recall, council also approved changes in retiree healthcare that will be effective in a couple days here in January 1st. That will be reflected in the next actuarial report. And we expect another drop in liability for that. So that one is in decent shape. The pension's the one that we're struggling with. So, and that's really all I had to add to it.
Okay, sorry. Any questions for our from Mr. Blum? I'm sorry. No questions tonight. We are all mastered this by now. So I want to say thank you, Mr. Blum, for all your work throughout the year, because this is our last council meeting this tonight. And thank you, Plant Moran, as well, and Ms. Atkins. This is my first time meeting you, so thank you as well. If we have any questions, I believe council, we have your information to contact you, as well as any of our residents as well, if they want more information and better education, as we all do. This is different. We're not financial auditors, so please reach out to Plant Moran or our Mr. Blum for more information, our city manager as well. We're going to go straight to mayor and council report. Councilman DeMonico.
Well, thank you everyone from Plant Moran. Thanks, Stephanie. Thanks, Tim. Just reading my Zoom screen here. Thank you all for the presentation. Thanks, Randy, Danielle, everyone on our team that worked on that. And that's all for now. We have plenty to talk about in a few minutes here.
Councilman Baker.
Just thank you everybody for this presentation, explaining everything. And I hope you all have a good night. And to those at Plant Moran, have a Merry Christmas.
Thank you, Councilman Curley.
Just Merry Christmas to everyone who is leaving us tonight.
Okay, and Councilwoman Lucido, our Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you to Plant Moran and to our financial department for getting our audit done. And thank you for the presentation this evening. And I hope everyone has a happy holiday that isn't going to be continuing to the next meeting with us.
Thank you, council, and thank you, staff of City of Eastpointe, and also again, Plant Moran, thank you for coming out, and also all of our administrators for helping Mr. Blum with some of these things and these numbers. So we're going to go right to our next meeting after a certain amount of time. Can I get a motion for adjournment, please?
So moved.
Support.
Motion and support, please call the roll.
Councilmember Curley,
Yes.
Councilmember Lucido,
Yes.
Councilmember DeMonico,
Yes.
Mayor Owens,
Yes,
Councilmember Baker.
Yes.
thank you. Meeting adjourned. Have a blessed year, end of the year. Happy New Year.
Thank you, everyone.